Welcome to a special bonus episode of The Chemical Show. I'm Victoria Meyer, your host, and I recently had the opportunity to engage in a series of really enlightening discussions at the Marsh North American Energy and Power Symposium. Today, I'm excited to share a standout conversation with Mike Kolodner, who is the U.S. Energy and Power Leader at Marsh, as well as the Global Renewable Energy Leader. We dive into the complexities of the energy transition and the pivotal role that the chemical industry plays in this transformative period. In fact, one of the things that really stood out about our conversation is this realization that as the chemical industry, we are some of the biggest consumers of electricity, and we need to be making our voice heard. So I felt this conversation was way too important to be kept under wraps, which is why I'm bringing it to you as a bonus episode. Don't forget to check out the show notes. I'm linking the other episodes and interviews that I had at the symposium, including Peter Huntsman from Huntsman Corporation, Rob Lee, CEO of Dragos, and of course, my compilation of risk insights from the Marsh leaders. So stay tuned. I think you're really going to enjoy this conversation. Welcome to The Chemical Show, the podcast where chemical means business. I'm your host, Victoria Meyer, bringing you stories and insights from leaders driving innovation and growth across the chemical industry. Each week, we explore key trends, real-world challenges, and the strategies that make an impact. Let's get started. So I am speaking with Mike Kolodner, who is the U.S. Energy and Power Leader and Global Renewable Energy Leader at Marsh. So you're doing a lot of great things across the company. I know you're getting ready to lead a session on wildfires, which we are not talking about today, although it is certainly in the news as we record this with the fire out in California, Pacific Palisades, and a lot of loss that's taking place. It's pretty crazy. But we're going to be talking a little bit more just about the realities of the energy transition, because I know that's one of the things that you talk about. So before we get into that, though, tell us just a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, I'm responsible for Marsh's U.S. Energy and Power business. I sit on our Global Energy and Power executive. We're a little unique in that our Energy and Power business is an actual global business, and so we're fully coordinated, and many of our clients are multinational, so that makes a lot of sense for us. So in that capacity, I oversee kind of our global renewable energy efforts as well, which, considering this is a chemical podcast, you might say that's not that relevant. Sometimes it's helpful to have that title. Sometimes it can be a burden, but I would say I'm generally agnostic. I was trained as a nuclear engineer. I was in the submarine force for a couple of years, and when I came into risk management, I came in through kind of the nuclear energy door, if you will, to be an advisor and consultant to the nuclear industry. So, I've held a bunch of different roles. Joined Marsh in 2006. I've left twice to go work full time for clients. So I've been, I've been on
and they've hired you back.
Yeah, I would say it's it was in the best interest of the client and my career and Marsh, I would think, that I take those roles. But it was good. I worked for a company called Exelon Corp, which was, we acquired a company called Constellation Energy, which is also in the news today. But
I missed that. Okay,
yeah,
I'll have to go look it up.
There's a potential merger that's pretty significant in the energy space that's happening. Anyway, so I spent 5 years there. It was fantastic. Came back to Marsh. Left again to go essentially be the chief underwriting officer and head of member relations for an industry mutual insurance company.
Okay.
I like to say I've been at Marsh since 2006. That's what I do.
I think what's interesting is a number of the people I've spoken with, both for the podcast, but just in the conference these last couple of days, have a military background.
Really?
Interesting.
Interesting. Yeah.
Is there a connection?
What's the connection? I would say it's within the energy space, broadly defined.
Yeah.
The military, the Navy in particular, it's but really all branches of military service, they're incredibly technical. So engineers tend to do really well. Okay. A lot of discipline, but also I think the energy industry, broadly defined, has always been a place that has attracted and gone out of their way to make opportunities available for transitioning veterans. So
Yeah.
we do see a high concentration of it.
Yeah.
I run into folks from my Navy community all the time.
That's cool. That's really cool. So I know one of the things we were talking about as we were teeing up for this conversation here was Peter Huntsman was the keynote speaker yesterday to kick off the event.
Yeah.
Really great. And he talked a lot about energy and just the realities of where we are from an energy usage perspective, how it ties into climate and carbon emissions, et cetera, but also just the energy transition and what's really where we really are. So can you just talk about that a little bit from your perspective?
I think he was absolutely fantastic. Yeah. I think initially, I mean, this is an energy and power conference. Yeah. So for the layperson,
a little bit of chemical.
Well, so there's things. So for the layperson, it's like so again, where's chemical fit in this? And it's chemical is energy. It is. I mean, chemical is energy, right? So when we think about what the words we're using here, I would just say there were a lot of folks who were initially kind of like, all right, so Peter Huntsman's your keynote at an energy and power. Well, I don't understand that a little bit. Okay, the second he got up, but the second he got up and started talking, 500 people now have a full appreciation for why this is so critical to talk about. And I think the best part about his entire conversation was it was grounded in the realities. Huntsman is a business that does incredibly important things for all of us.
Yes, it does.
And we are making it really difficult for him to continue to compete and for his business to be successful in support of many of the very things that we are claiming to want. And his comments around, the carbon footprint associated with building and deploying a wind turbine, for example.
Right.
He is not wrong. That is reality. Right. So.
Right. The number of chemical products that are needed for it.
Absolutely.
And then
don't even get me started on batteries and solar panels because there's an enormous amount there.
And then the end of life aspects of it, which shows up, but it's. It's not really showing up from a regulatory perspective as far as I can tell, from where I sit. I don't really know.
It is, but I would say the other one, though, and this is the one that it didn't really occur to me until I was really kind of digesting his comments with some folks last night over dinner. But actually, one of the things that I learned when I was at Exelon was I got kind of deep in utility holding company and utility operations.
Right.
And it was fascinating to me. One of the things I learned, which I did not know going into it, and I found it so fascinating, was it's not what you and I use or consume from an energy perspective that really drives the engine of these large energy companies, right? What drives it is our commercial and industrial base, right?
The industrial complex, so to speak.
And if you look at Lawrence Livermore Labs puts out every year the sources and uses of energy, where it's generated from, how it's consumed. Yeah. And it's a very simple chart. I use it with my kids. It's awesome. Yeah, it's very cool.
Yeah.
But when you look at who the consumers are, right? So industry, whether it's tech or chemical, right? That's who we create the energy for.
Yes.
They're the ones who need it.
Yes.
So I thought that was fascinating that he really attacked it because we had later on a panel, we had a couple of risk managers, one from Total Energy, we also had one from NextEra Energy, right? And we also had one from Air Products.
Right.
So you have this great mix of people, but I was listening to the NextEra Energy comments, and one of the things that they said was, we're in this business and I know it may be tough over here, but we're really doing well. And I was like, of course you are. Energy demand is up, and you're good at what you do. So NextEra is great at what they do, and so they're doing great. That was not the issue. It made me think of Huntsman, not as an energy company. No. They're a consumer of energy. They're the not. I mean, obviously Huntsman's a client of Marsh's, but it's not. They're the client. They're the customer.
Yes.
The customer is telling the energy industry, these are the realities of the world I live in. It's wonderful that you guys want to do all this stuff. And you could feel it in the room that Mr. Huntsman was like, I am the customer. I am telling you, this is my reality.
Well, and I think as a global business leader, of which Peter Huntsman is obviously leading a global business, there's a lot of global businesses across chemicals. And one of the real challenges, and that came up yesterday, is European policy.
Yes.
European manufacturing and energy policy, which is basically encouraging companies to stop manufacturing.
Yes.
And it's actually a little bit of this not in my backyard, because the other piece is, and I heard this before, I heard this from Peter's talk, which is around the China continues to build coal-fired electricity.
Tons.
It is the most efficient way for them to
Tons.
get what they want.
Well,
right?
and he did sneak in too. Germany, they turned off the nuclear plants and they started building renewables, and they too are burning more coal today than they were before. So it's not just China.
It's everywhere.
It's the unintended outcome.
It's the unintended
policy,
consequences, and here's a little known fact. My father worked for Exelon,
No
predecessor ComEd in Illinois, right?
Yeah.
So that's where
So
I grew
cool.
up. My dad's a ComEd guy. I was
awesome.
really appreciative of electricity growing up, and of nuclear power.
Yes.
And right, so because they had nuclear power up there, I think.
Illinois,
I don't know if any of
Illinois
it's
is
still
large.
operating,
Oh,
right?
it is.
It is. Okay,
Yeah.
great. There was fully appreciative of that. And I think actually when you look at nuclear power today and what's available, it's super efficient. When we're trying to achieve the goals that we're trying to achieve, we should be encouraging more nuclear rather than discouraging it. But I think the transition is a transition, right? Because when he talked about the amount of energy that's still consumed from wood, right?
Yeah.
So if people are using wood to heat and to cook, well, moving from wood to coal is efficient.
Right.
Moving from coal to gas is an efficiency gain.
Right.
Moving from gas to, let's just say, hydroelectric is an efficiency gain, or at least a carbon gain, right?
Right.
It may not. So I think it's all about transition and relativity.
I grew up in a defunct whaling town.
Really?
We used to burn that for light. Whale oil, right?
Like it's whale blubber. Yeah, it was a fuel.
Oh no,
yeah.
it was huge. Yeah, I think it's fast. It is a transition. It's also one that doesn't play out over one administration cycle.
No,
right? And it definitely
is
doesn't
long.
play out. Yeah, I mean, exactly as you said. We're still burning wood like we did 1,000 years ago, right? And 2,000 years ago, whatever.
Yeah.
So it's not like there's an end state. I do think that the thing that is worth talking about, though, and the city did touch on this too, is if you just look at, and we make this as simple as possible, supply and demand. The reality is we're putting constraints on supply, and we are driving demand up exponentially at a rate that we probably haven't seen in multiple generations. So there isn't really even humans on the planet who have firsthand experience of seeing the kind of transformation, energy additions that are going to be needed just to support where we're going.
Yeah.
We've let AI out of the box. It's going to consume an enormous amount of energy. In addition to the energy,
it is an enormous consumer, right?
Yeah.
Enormous.
Yeah.
A consumer of energy and of water.
Right. And his comments around, he talked a little bit about, we once thought that we'd run out of food here, right?
Yeah,
And then we
I
made
remember
advances
those days.
there, right? Yeah. So okay, so it's a similar thing. I do think we will solve the problem of how do we supply this increasingly exponential demand.
Yeah.
But I think his key message, the thing I took away was, it's not as simple. We got to stop pretending that you can just build a bunch of stuff and it's all going to be fine. There are unintended consequences, and it's a far more complex ecosystem when we talk about global energy infrastructure, energy security, than I think a lot of folks are prepared to acknowledge. But anyone who was in that room yesterday, well,
it was a wake-up call.
We're talking about it. Yeah,
well, and I would say it was a wake-up call at the beginning of the day and a wake-up call at the end of the day when we talked about cybersecurity.
Yes, that was a good one too.
That was a good one as well. But when we come back and think about the energy and the energy transition, what's your role and what's Marsh's role in this? How are you engaging players across that system?
I love this question because it's the simplest answer I can give you, which is Marsh's role is the same as it ever was, right? Which is supporting our clients in being more successful in what they want to do, right? We just happen to, our job is to support them in the risk space, right? So we're global leaders in the risk and insurance space. If it falls in that ecosystem and we do our things right, and we make Marsh work for a client, then ultimately our clients are more successful as a result. They get great advice, great counsel, they optimize cost of risk, they do lots of things. They make the insurance market, if they buy insurance, some of them don't even buy it. Some of our clients aren't actually insurance buyers, right? But insurance, risk, that's the ecosystem. So, when I look at the energy transition, all Marsh is here to do is help our clients thrive through it. If it is indeed a start and a finish, right? I imagine I want every single one of my Marsh clients to be there at the finish line.
Yes.
And frankly, to the extent they have competitors who are not Marsh clients, I'd rather they not be there, right? and I think so. And I think we share that with our clients, right? So we just want our clients to be successful, and we want to create value for them. It's less about selling them stuff and more about helping them create value. And I think this is a really challenging time fraught with risk. So this is a place where we can be really, really impactful for our clients. And that's what we want to do during this transition. We just want to be helpful, and we want to help them thrive.
I love it.
Not just survive.
So if you were advising a chemical executive on, sitting here today or tomorrow when you go back to your day job, what's one thing they can be doing and should be doing or thinking about here in 2025 as it relates to energy transition risk, et cetera?
Yeah, I think, it's one, I would say, it always depends on who we're talking to and what their issues are. Every single one of our clients presents different issues, but at a high level, for the chemical industry, I would say probably one of the most important things that they could be doing, particularly executives, is exactly what Peter Huntsman did yesterday. We have to be communicating across in a multi-dimensional fashion. It is not enough to stay in the chemical industry bubble and just talk about these things.
Yeah.
What Huntsman did yesterday was tell a bunch of traditional energy companies, including companies that are making their living building solar and wind and creating problems ultimately for him, right? He said what he said, and he got that word out. And I think the more that executives in what I'll say is energy adjacent industries appreciate the complexity of the situation, the better informed we'll be when we tell policymakers what it is we're looking for. A lot of what Marsh does is help build consensus so that we get effective policymaking. I mean, it's a huge thing, whether I think it's, the TRIA legislation that was passed after September 11th. It's a great example of where, we help our clients shape policy. But I think that to me is the most important one. Some of the underwriters who dared to raise their hand and challenge him yesterday, interestingly enough, one of them in particular was a renewable energy underwriter. Yeah. Right? Couldn't get in there. Like, we got to pierce the veil. We've got to accept some hard truths. We can be passionate about our role in the transition, but we've got to acknowledge the reality of the broader. And so I just love that he pulled people out of their silos yesterday. And I think we've got to do that. And that's what I would say, for executives in the chemical space, they're the largest consumers of energy. They're out there using it. They got a stake in it. They need to be part of the conversation around what we're using and how.
Love it. Good. Mike, thank you.
Thank you
I really
so much.
appreciate your time. It's been great.
Absolutely love it.
Awesome.
You're the best.
Thanks for joining us today on The Chemical Show. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe, leave a review, and most importantly, share it with your friends and colleagues. For more insights, visit thechemicalshow.com and connect with us on LinkedIn. You can find me at Victoria King Meyer on LinkedIn, and you can also find us at The Chemical Show Podcast. Join us next time for more conversations and strategies shaping the future of the industry. We'll see you soon.